The ordinary Tuesday morning began with the sound of children laughing outside the apartment building. Daniel Hayes watched his 7-year-old daughter, MIA, carefully zip up her small backpack before taking his hand. "Ready for work with Dad?" he asked. She nodded enthusiastically. Her elementary school was closed for a teacher training day, and Daniel couldn't afford a babysitter on such short notice. Fortunately, his supervisor had agreed that MIA could quietly stay in the maintenance office while he repaired electrical systems inside Ashford Financial Tower. Daniel had worked as an independent electrician for almost 5 years. Few people knew much about him. He kept to himself. Finished every job on time. Never complained. Every evening he hurried home to cook dinner, help MIA with homework, and read one chapter of her favorite adventure book before bedtime. His life was peaceful. Simple. Exactly the way he wanted it. The past stayed locked away. After leaving the military, Daniel had made himself one promise. No more violence unless there was absolutely no other choice. He had seen enough during years of overseas deployments. When his wife later passed away after a sudden illness, he quietly left his high-paying security consulting job because constant travel kept him away from MIA. Instead, he chose honest local work that allowed him to be present for every school concert, every birthday, and every scraped knee. To Daniel, success was no longer measured by rank or salary. It was measured by whether his daughter smiled at the dinner table. That morning, they arrived at the 6th-story Ashford Financial Tower shortly after 9 o'clock. The lobby sparkled with polished marble floors and towering glass walls overlooking the city skyline. Business executives hurried toward elevators while receptionists welcomed clients. MIA looked around in amazement. "Dad. This place looks like a castle." Daniel laughed. "Just remember. Someone still has to change the light bulbs." She giggled. At the security desk, the guard recognized Daniel immediately. "Morning, Dan." "Morning. Electrical issue again. Emergency lighting on the executive floors." The guard nodded before handing him a temporary access badge. "Take elevator C." Daniel thanked him. Distracted by MIA asking whether they could buy hot chocolate afterward, he accidentally entered elevator A instead. Neither noticed the discreet plaque beside the polished doors. "Executive access only." The elevator climbed rapidly. Daniel frowned. This doesn't seem right. Before he could press another button, the doors opened into the executive lobby where Billionaire CEO Victoria Ashford had just finished a meeting with international investors. Board members, attorneys, and senior executives filled the hallway. Everyone turned. The maintenance worker standing in dusty boots looked completely out of place. Daniel immediately realized his mistake. "I'm sorry. Wrong elevator." He turned toward the control panel. Then everything changed. A tremendous crash echoed through the building. People screamed from somewhere below. An emergency alarm began sounding across every floor. Several executives instinctively reached for their phones. Moments later, a terrified receptionist ran from the stairwell. "Someone has a weapon in the lobby." Panic spread instantly. Security officers moved to secure the executive floor while locking electronic access doors. Inside the lobby below, employees scattered for cover as an armed man shouted for everyone to stay where they were. Emergency services were immediately notified. Victoria received a brief update through her security earpiece. The intruder demanded access to executive management. No one was to leave. Daniel gently pulled MIA behind a reception desk. He crouched beside her. "Listen carefully." She nodded. "If anything happens, stay behind cover until someone in a police uniform comes for you." "What about you?" "I'll always come back if I can." She hugged him tightly. Across the building, police officers established a perimeter within minutes. Negotiators prepared to make contact. Inside the lobby, the frightened man paced nervously. Witnesses later described him as exhausted rather than enraged. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. He repeatedly insisted that someone at the company had destroyed his life and that he wanted to be heard. Security cameras showed him looking toward the executive elevators. "I need someone to come with me." His eyes swept across the frightened crowd. They stopped on Daniel, the maintenance worker holding his daughter's hand. "You." He pointed directly at Daniel. "Bring your toolbox." Daniel slowly stood. He quietly handed MIA to a nearby security officer. "Please stay with her." The officer nodded. "I will." Victoria watched the security monitors upstairs. Something immediately caught her attention. Daniel wasn't behaving like an ordinary frightened civilian. He wasn't making sudden movements. He wasn't arguing. His breathing remained slow and controlled. His eyes constantly scanned exits, reflections, distances, and the position of every person in the room. One retired police commander standing beside Victoria whispered, "That's not luck. That's training." The armed man motioned Daniel toward the elevator. "Move." Daniel obeyed calmly. Just before the doors closed, Victoria looked directly into his eyes through the security camera. For a brief second, she saw something she would never forget. Not fear. Not anger. But the quiet focus of someone who had once faced impossible situations before. She had no idea who the single father really was. Within the next hour, however, the truth about Daniel's past would astonish everyone in the building, and completely change the course of the terrifying standoff. Daniel slowly placed his toolbox on the floor. He raised his hands just enough to show he wasn't a threat. The armed man motioned for him to move. "Pick it up." Daniel obeyed without hesitation. Years earlier, that calm movement had been drilled into him through countless hours of military training. But no one in the lobby knew that. To everyone else, he was simply a quiet electrician and single father trying to keep his daughter safe. The man forced Daniel toward the executive elevators while keeping several frightened employees behind them. Victoria Ashford, the billionaire CEO, watched from only a few feet away. She couldn't understand why Daniel appeared so composed. Most people would have been shaking. Daniel wasn't. He was watching. Listening. Measuring. The elevator doors opened. The armed man ordered Daniel inside. Victoria suddenly stepped forward. "If you need someone important," she said steadily, "take me instead." The man pointed the weapon toward her. "No. I want him." Daniel looked at Victoria. "Please stay with my daughter." His voice carried no panic. Only concern. Victoria nodded. "I promise." As the elevator doors closed, Daniel glanced at MIA one last time. She managed a small, brave smile. "I love you, Dad. I love you more." The doors slid shut. Inside the elevator, silence filled the air. The man breathed heavily. His hands trembled. Daniel noticed immediately. This wasn't someone enjoying the situation. This was someone overwhelmed by desperation. When they reached the executive floor, the man ordered Daniel into a conference room overlooking the city. Police had already surrounded the building below. Negotiators established communication within minutes. Daniel quietly placed his toolbox beside a chair. The man paced nervously. "They ruined my life." Daniel didn't interrupt. "My company collapsed. They blamed me." No one listened. Daniel simply nodded. Sometimes being heard mattered more than being answered. Several minutes passed. The man finally looked at Daniel. "Aren't you afraid?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Of course. You don't look afraid." "I've learned fear doesn't have to make every decision." The man stared at him. "You were military." Daniel remained silent. "I can tell." After a long pause, Daniel answered honestly. "I served many years ago." "What branch?" Daniel hesitated. "The Navy." The man narrowed his eyes. "Doing what?" Daniel looked out the window toward the police vehicles below. I was part of a special operations unit. The room became completely still. You mean? Daniel nodded once. I was a Navy SEAL. The man's grip tightened before slowly relaxing. You could have attacked me. Daniel answered quietly. I could have tried. Why didn't you? Because people get hurt when pride wins. Their words lingered. Downstairs, Victoria watched live security footage with police commanders. One officer looked surprised. Our background check just came back. He turned toward her. Your maintenance contractor really is a retired Navy SEAL. Victoria stared at the monitor. Everything suddenly made sense. His awareness. His calm breathing. His careful movements. Yet instead of fighting, he was talking. A senior crisis negotiator smiled slightly. That's exactly what we'd hope for. Hours passed. Daniel continued speaking calmly. He asked about the man's family. His childhood. The business he had lost. Little by little, the anger gave way to exhaustion. Finally, the man sat down. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Daniel nodded. I believe you. I just wanted someone to listen. I'm listening. Tears filled the man's eyes. He slowly placed the weapon on the conference table. Daniel didn't rush forward. He simply said, let's finish this safely. The man stepped away. Police officers entered moments later and took him into custody without anyone being injured. The entire building erupted in relieved applause. When Daniel finally reached the lobby, MIA ran into his arms. You kept your promise. Daniel hugged her tightly. I told you I'd come back. Victoria approached quietly. I don't know how to thank you. Daniel shook his head. Thank the officers. They protected everyone. She smiled. They told me you helped make that possible. News of the peaceful resolution spread quickly. Reporters praised the police response and Daniel's extraordinary composure. During one interview, a journalist asked the question everyone wanted answered. Were your Navy SEAL skills what saved the day? Daniel thought for a moment. They helped me stay calm. He looked toward MIA. But becoming a father taught me something even more important. What was that? Every problem looks different when your first goal isn't to win. It's to make sure everyone gets home. Weeks later, Victoria established a foundation supporting veterans transitioning into civilian careers and expanded mental health resources for employees facing severe personal crises. She invited Daniel to help shape the program. He accepted on one condition. I don't want my military service to be the focus. What should be? Daniel smiled. That asking for help before reaching a breaking point is a sign of strength, not weakness. Years afterward, MIA would sometimes ask about that frightening day. Daniel never described himself as a hero. He always told her the same thing. Courage isn't about looking fearless. It's about choosing the safest path you can, even when you're scared. People remembered the headline about the hostage-taker choosing a single dad and discovering his Navy SEAL past. But those who understood the whole story knew the real turning point wasn't his military background. It was his decision to use discipline, patience, and compassion to help bring a terrifying situation to a peaceful end, allowing every family in that building to return home safely.